5th, 2024 at 6:35 p.m. All commissioners are present except for Pedro Guerrero, and Doris Flores Brooks will probably be joining us later this evening. First item of business is approval of the minutes of December 19th, 2023.
Motion to approve subject to corrections.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to jump around on the agenda a little bit tonight. We're going to start off with GPA docket 2410, petition to approve purchase of water system diesel generators. We have a legal counsel report and a proposed order. Anthony, I believe this is yours.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So in this petition, GPA is asking for approval to issue a solicitation to replace several diesel generators that it maintains at Guam Water Works Authority, water and wastewater sites, approximately 94 of those. GPA is estimating that the cost of the new generators will be about $11.4 million. Now, these generators have been at these sites for quite a while, and most of the generators are at least are over 29 years old. They're near the end of their service life. They've become very difficult to maintain. Most are unreliable. Serious problems obtaining replacement parts for them simply due to their age. So typically, GPA is requesting the PUC's authorization to solicit for 2230 kilowatt, 23 125 kilowatt, 13 175 kilowatt, 16 300 kilowatt, 9 500 kilowatt, 2 800 kilowatt, and 2 1400 kilowatt generators. In addition to these, GPA is requesting for the PUC's authorization to solicit for 10 portable generators. These would be 5 175 kilowatt, 3 300 kilowatt, and 2 500 kilowatt generators on trailers for an additional. Looking at this, the estimated cost of purchasing the generators is reasonable. So I did a very cursory internet search trying to find prices for these types of these size generators. Now, I came up with the price of $7,737,877. Yes, I know it's a $1.7 million difference, but I don't have the specs for the generators that GWA had. For the smaller, which had the prices, they kind of start with no covering, with no mounting, just the generator itself. And then by adding that, the price would go up. Further, for the larger size generators, for the new ones, it would just say call for quote. So instead, I did find some newer, I should say, or used generators. So that's kind of how I arrived at a lower price, but I did not include shipping or insurance and anything else. So I believe, based on this search, that it's reasonable for GWA to estimate a $9.5 million price tag. Likewise, it would be reasonable for them to anticipate a $2 million contingency in the event that shipping, for example, is unexpectedly higher, or the cost of the generator unit is unexpectedly higher. I also determined that GPA's solicitation for the generators is prudent. The extended power outages in the months following Typhoon Mawar and the load shedding on Guam is currently experiencing as a result of the unscheduled outages of GPA's baseload plants really have caused an unexpected increase in the demand for these backup generators that literally operate GWA's water and wastewater facilities when these outages occur. And of course, GWA's aging fleet of these generators is not meeting this demand, and it's better to replace the generators, especially considering spare parts are really not available or being made for them anymore. Hence, it's prudent to go out and get new ones. GPA solicitation for the purchase of generators is also necessary. These facilities are the ones that operate, or GWA relies on electric pumps to operate its pumping stations, both drinking water and wastewater. And in the event of outages, these generators are very necessary to keep these critical facilities operational during the period of the outage. Hence, I find that their request is reasonable, prudent, and necessary. I have recommended the PUC approve this petition. I have provided a draft order that would do so. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. John, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tony. Yes, Mr. Chairman, we bought most of these generators back in the late 90s. They're about 35 years old now. And then we took over the rest of GWA generators that were under them, GWA in 2015. So we consolidated everything. So we had 140 back then. We have a total now of about close to about 240. So this is only 40% of really the entire, but these are the most needed it's like parts is getting hard too. So what we'll try and do is whatever we take out, we'll use for parts for the others, and then we'll be back again and for another series once we get busy. It's coming out of our CIP funding. So as we recover more and more under recovery and other stuff, we'll start investing in the CIP more and more into the CIP program.
Is the rest of the remaining inventory still quite old also, John?
Yeah, most of them are still, but they're still in good shape and we can continue, but it's getting more and more difficult, so that's why we have to go out and you can't go out and change it all in one time, so that's why we take the worst and those that don't have or whatever and put it together.
Yeah.
And then we try to break it down into a series so that we can standardize as much as possible. And then the portables are again as things go out, emergencies, then they go to those different places. And again, not only water production, but as you see in this list, there's a lot of wastewater. We have to keep that flow going now.
And do you use all these from time to time when you need to, when the base loads are down? When we have insufficient?
Yes, what we try to do is we put on what we call tier 1 and tier 2. Mm-hmm. Most of those are like greater than 50 kilowatts. Trying to put all 240 back on, and then with the conditions that we have.
Yeah.
So we try and keep to the, I'm not sure what exactly what the threshold is, but I think it's about 75 kilowatt and above.
Yeah.
So yes, every time we're into load shedding, before 6, they're all put on the line to help alleviate. So I think there's maybe about 4 or 5 megawatts that come under that. It's like Tony mentioned.
Any other questions from the commission?
Just a comment, Fred, we have, the PC has a built-in contingency already, right? Yeah. It's like 20%. It's built in already. So can we just strike the contingency language from the order?
Yeah, so that's
already built in,
that's in there. We're fine with that.
John, what's the expected delivery time on these generators? What's your thoughts on that?
Probably 6 months to a year. And again, Jennifer's going to kick me pretty soon, but I think it's about what we're looking at. And again, maybe not all of them, because it could be, like I said, it could be a series that will come in at 30 kilowatts earlier than the bigger one. But indications that we can get some of this treatment. 6 months, I think, is past.
Are they all collectively going to go out in one bid package?
Yes, but we're discussing about whether we're going to award it as one total or supplement by segments. And I think that so we're still working on that. He may have an idea right now, what we're looking for.
Yes, what has been the staff of these generators? Because I remember last year there was one that was going. Are they subject to staff or not?
What I've been stolen, especially more, not in the past actually, and a little less now. Usually before Christmas, a lot of wires, not the generator, but the wires hooking up the generators. Other times they'll steal diesel fuel, drain it, and take it. However, I think the 155 kilowatt was the only one that was ever stolen from us. And we do have it back now. Okay.
So at all these locations, all the theft deterrent measures are in place, or CCTV, or is there?
If you recall, the PUC approved the pilot project for physical security.
Yes.
So we're putting that in now, and then after that, then we'll be putting whatever we get up with that pilot project. We'll be addressing the 200 some sites. No? So that'll be a future in Cancun. This is the first phase of it. And then again, most likely cameras, someone to monitor it, because it's hard for the utility itself just to keep monitoring that. It's not its core business and stuff. But those are something.
You or you don't have them? That was something.
No, we don't have those cameras now. But it's part of that pilot project that that the PUC also has approved already, that they're putting in. It's for $2 million project on several locations, putting this in. They're working on it now. And then from there, we will come back on the project to provide physical security for all the, again, these are all mainly GWA stations. There are GPA substations and all of them, but a lot more water and wastewater stations. Just over 200 of those versus GPA's means maybe is about less than 50. So about 250 sites.
Anything else?
So just for clarification, the amendment will just say instead of 9.5 million or 11.5 million, we'll just say 9.5 million plus any authorized contingencies.
Now, do you anticipate this going over 9.5 million?
We just don't want to, it could, it could go over, but.
Well, you have their contingency, whether it's.
Yeah, if we have the 20, if you have the 20% contingency and that's in there to the protocol that applies here, then we don't have to add that, right? We only added it to, make sure it's clear that, we have something.
Yes. No, I'll withdraw.
All right, thank you.
Anyway, we will be back to you. It's time to award, correct? We will bring the contract back, or can we just proceed, even as long as we are within budget? Because I think typically it's a matter of practice or protocol or practice. Whenever we have a contract that the CC approves, then we bring it back to the CC. But if you approve it, we move forward, we stay within the budget, and that's fine, then that could save another petition to the PUC. So that's a question we have.
Thanks, John. Anything else? Or is there a motion?
Motion to approve GPA docket 2410.
Second. Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next item. Going to jump around here a little bit again. We're going to move over to GPA docket 2406, petition to approve Amendment 2 to Hanwha Energy Corporation's Phase 2 Renewable Energy Acquisition Power Purchase Agreement. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So you will recall this matter was before you at the November 30th meeting. And at that time, I had given a report on this proposal to approve amendments to the Hanwha contract. Initially, at that time, I felt that Hanwha had not been diligent in completing the work that it was supposed to complete over a 5-year period. In fact, it didn't build the plant. In addition, the fact that the plant wasn't built probably cost GPA in terms of savings an amount of $45 million and maybe as much as $90 million. But nevertheless, I had proposed that you approve the project. And the main reasons for that, there were 4 of them. First of all, the Hanwha plant was included in the 100 megawatts of solar power that GPA was ordered to produce in the consent decree with the US EPA. The failure to proceed with the Hanwha project could result in GPA non-compliance with the consent decree and subject GPA to damages. The GPA is in a position where it has to attempt, it would be either to salvage the Hanwha project or to rebid the project out. The problem with rebid, of course, is that it just doesn't appear to be a reasonable option. There would be a possibility of protests and the prospect that the project would not be completed on time. And remember, the US EPA and the district court have to approve. I suppose there will be amendments in any event to the consent decree to extend the time for the completion of the Hanwha project. The Hanwha proposed 41 megawatt plant will have an energy storage system and allow GPA to shift load during the nighttime peak hours. And finally, a question was raised last time about the security that GPA has. And it does retain Hanwha's, it's called development security, like a bond, but it's the amount of 4.6 million. So if Hanwha defaults on this project, the GPA can go after that. Now, at the last meeting, there were a couple of additional questions raised. One was about legality of the Hanwha contract in a couple of respects. First of all, the megawatts that were approved in the original project, that is 2 30 megawatt plants or a total of 60 megawatts, has now been reduced in the contract amendments to 41 megawatts. And secondly, the original contract did not really include any plan for the microgrid, for the battery storage. So those are new elements of the amendments to the Hanwha contract. Commissioner Montanola had raised those issues and also raised a question about pricing. The question really was, well, the price that is being given for the Hanwha contract, how would that compare to a price now, for example, if the matter went out to bid? And at the meeting, GM Benavente indicated that GPA was just about to receive bids on phase 4, so we would have perhaps a basis for comparing the price of the Hanwha project and the phase 4 bids. So I will address the cost issue now, I believe. It appears that the cost for the Hanwha project now is in all likelihood cheaper than it will be if the project is rebid out again. So what we have to compare is the prices that GPA gave us for the Hanwha amendments, that is what it will cost per megawatt hour, as compared to what the cost will be in the phase 4 projects. Now, this isn't exactly a apples to apples comparison, I would say, because of course the projects are all different. They have different amounts of megawatts. The phase 4, we don't even know yet whether all the bids are approved or not, but we do have the bid abstracts, which was provided by GPA, with figures about what the per megawatt cost would be under the phase 4 bid. So comparing those, if you look at the Hanwha project, I attached to my report the pricing for Amendment 2 with Hanwha. It has two elements. This is the first contract year. So there's a charge for solar power, which is $64.22 per megawatt hour, and then a microgrid cost of $79.63. So the total blended rate per megawatt hour is $143.85. Now, as to the bids in the phase 4 program, there were a number of bids. I believe there were 11 bids received. And of course, we don't know if these contractors are even going to be approved at this point, but I can base this comparison upon what the bid prices were for phase 4. Looking at the lowest bid on the phase 4 contract, it was $150 per megawatt hour. So already it's a little bit higher than the Hanwha cost. And also with the phase 4, of course, the cost goes up. I believe it goes up from $150 in the first year up to $190 in the 25th year. Whereas under the Hanwha contract, it's $150 in the first year, $171.36. So from 143 in the first year of Hanwha to 176 in the 25th year. Whereas phase 4, the lowest bid, 150 in the first year, 190 in the 25th year. Now that bid was extremely low. Most of the other bids were in the area of $173 per megawatt hour. So I can conclude, and again, it has to be qualified based on the fact that we don't know what bids will be approved, but it does appear that the pricing under the Hanwha contract is better than the pricing under the phase 4 bids. So in my opinion, and what I said in my supplemental report, is that would be an additional reason to approve the Hanwha contract. If GPA has to go out and rebid at this point, it will likely be more expensive and probably in line with the phase 4 bids that GPA received. Now, secondly, of course, questions had come up about legality. Well, is it legal for GPA to basically reduce the amount of megawatts that are allowed under this contract, and also to provide for an extensive microgrid in this bid? Now, I've stated my view in my report. The PUC is not a procurement board. It does not ordinarily determine the legality of contracts or whether a procurement is legal or not. But here, in terms of the information I can find, and that GPA's counsel provided at the last meeting, I do believe that those questions have been sufficiently answered. And first of all, I did attach as an exhibit. This was an appeal before the Office of Public Accountability, which our member, Commissioner Brooks, had handled. And in fact, it dealt with this very Hanwha contract. And there, the argument of a disappointed bidder was that the bid was not good because GPA had increased the megawatts. Originally, it was supposed to be 30 megawatts per plant, and then GPA afterwards, with the approval of the PUC, had increased it up to 60 megawatts. The bidder said that that was inappropriate and illegal. And secondly, that the micro bid was not legal because it hadn't been authorized. However, the OPA decision had cited a term from the original IFB. This was in the general terms and conditions that appear in most contracts. And there, the general terms and conditions, number 23, stated that the government has the right to increase or decrease the items for award and make additional awards for the same type items. So in that case, it was held that GPA could increase the amount of megawatts, I think based on that contract language again. And that's what GPA's counsel has represented to us. I think ordinarily we accept on procurement the positions of the utilities. Of course, the PUC always wants to be sure that a procurement is open, fair, but as to legality, if any party has a problem with this, they can file an appeal at the OPA office. So based upon that fact, and with microgrids, the original bid that Hanwha applied to did contain language authorizing microgrid. So that's nothing new. It said right in the bid that GPA could develop a plan for a microgrid. So I think both of those, at least in my mind, there's been the representations of GPA and its counsel. There's the OPA decision. I think there's enough to proceed ahead with approving the contract. So in conclusion, I suggest that the PUC approve the amendments to the second amendment to the Hanwha contract and the amendment to the interconnection agreement. The cost that GPA will produce from the Hanwha plant will be less expensive than a bid would be. I'm quite convinced of that. So I think that's a final fifth reason for the commission to approve the Hanwha amendments. I have submitted an order that would accomplish that end, and I do recommend that approval be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. John, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Fred. Yes, we agree with this recommendation, and it will help us with the consent decree, definitely. Yes, we weren't very happy at all, and we're waiting to terminate this contract at the end of the period and bring in the 4.6. However, we still had the issue of dealing with the consent decree and doing something different that will be benefit to us, which is putting in batteries. No? So this actually, in comparison, it's about the same amount of batteries that is being put in compared to the phase 4. Phase 4, we went out with 100%, meaning catch all the energy, and we'll shift it. But indications were the pricings will be way over 20 cents or more because of the cost of batteries and all of that. So we ended up, and again, this is what phase 4 is, about 50% of the energy will be shifted. So we're getting about, for example, there's over 200 megawatts here that this 11 group, if all were awarded. About 100 megawatt of cool shifting batteries are included in this. So the pricing is very similar, and of course, we work very hard. Our team worked very hard to find one. up to the last minute to get this price down to where it was. And actually, I was hoping that the message was clear out to the phase four, a little ahead, saying, hey, this is where we are, 14.3. But they couldn't, it was not viable for them. And again, there's some various reasons. Some require more transmission lines, some require further away from others. For example, Cortec in Mojave. I'm not sure what level of transmission lines they're putting in, but just deviating a little bit. The phase four are going through what they call the system stability study. That will determine if what they had thought of transmission lines and everything or is in their package does meet the system grid needs by working with an independent, we have an independent group that does this analysis. That being the case, if they pass, or if it's failing to meet that, and they have to put in more transmission, more cost, it's not at an increased cost. They will have to absorb that and make that decision whether they're going to go for it or not if we intend to mark to them. See, at this point, but so yes, Mr. Chair, we really do need to get this going so I can have some good news for US EPA. Because phase four, even if we waited for that, and that will be the quickest, next quickest event, you're looking at about mid or late 2027. So,
Thank you, John. And Hanwha is indicating that they can have this up by the end of 2025.
that's correct, and maybe a month or two now because we had a contract before, but we'll work with them and twist their arm to see. But I think it not will be January or February 2026. No? This was 2025.
And on the battery there, that will be a load shift battery that can take us to the peak between 6 and 10 p.m.
That's correct. If you look at they're offering 22 megawatt power, that's the capacity, at 66 megawatt hours, that's the amount of energy it holds. So if we ask for 22, it will run for 3 hours. If we ask for 15, it will run for 4 hours. If we ask for 10, so you can vary it depending on your need. But this again, this actually is the model similar to the phase four. This is how we work with this. It's actually phase 3. Remember the one on Navy base? That was the model, right, for catching the energy and shifting. So, and then just going a little further, Mr. We do have a request in we're looking for grants for batteries that, as I may recall, maybe mentioning it to the PUC, trying to get 180 megawatt, 900 megawatt hour series of batteries here. And the reason for that is eventually we're going to have to catch more of this daytime, because if we're not able to shift 100% or the cost is too high, we have to find a way to catch this in the daytime and shift it. And a centralized battery will allow us to do that. We can put in a centralized battery, I think estimated for less than 2 cents a kilowatt hour spread around all, instead of every component like this having their own battery, and the battery is only used for the use of that facility. By having a centralized battery, we can utilize it in the system in any which way. We can charge it with the generators if necessary. If there's no sun, we have cloud-based. So again, this is still all fitting into our plan. And are we going to award 17.9? Well, considering it and looking at also the fact of, this is a hedge, no? And if you consider that we're on diesel oil, right, and if that thing, diesel can go to 100, in fact, it did go to about $180 a barrel in the last year or two when Russia first invaded Ukraine. But this provides a hedging so that if no matter what, if anything, if this is 17, it may go to 18, but it won't go to the 29 cents that, that it did just a while ago. So again, this is where maybe we have to hedge from this. And again, I'm not ready to say we're going to award it. It depends on all this stability study. But maybe we do that, and then the next phase will start to, getting centralized battery, the next phase will bring the cost down further. But
Now,
I worked out those numbers, and we're working on those numbers too.
all these bids in phase 4 that are out there, none of them have the type of battery you're talking about to get us to the peak. They're all more frequency interruption type batteries,
So they will be more shifting.
shifting.
Yeah, but they'll be able to work together. John and the team are working so that if we lose a generator somewhere, this will catch. But again, with more batteries on the line, we see the issue of losing circuits because we lost a conventional generator, becoming less and less and less. Case in point, Ukudu has got a 25 megawatt battery coming on the line with the 198. And that's in case they lose, one unit, this will help avoid those 100 frequencies.
It
So
catches
these
it for-
batteries will help that also as we move
It
forward.
catches it for a short period of time.
Yes, just for short period. So,
Not to take us to the peak.
yeah, not like the one we have today. The one we have today is still, and in fact, I'm working to see whether we can shift some of that capacity at least in the evening to help avoid that, mitigate, alleviate some load shedding until we get all our plans in place. No? But the batteries are very, just kind of work. The only way we're going to go to Quebec to get good news about all this. If we did award this, phase 4, will be about 50% renewables ahead of our target of 2030.
I can see why you want to get a grant, though, to get a big 180 megawatt peak-in battery to make phase 4
Down
more
in the
useful.
center, and actually it could be, well, we've been preaching to the federal government, FEMA and others, notice, actually 4 sets of 45 megawatts. The one in Anderson, perhaps, one in Naval Station, one in Okudu, one in Marble or somewhere, all charged from the transmission site. So they can provide that station, like Anderson, or they can still provide out to the rest of the system. So that's what I'm hoping is getting to the top of their list as part of our request. And sometimes I go off on a tangent, but we only asked for $6.4 billion, no? For FEMA and the federal government to all work together and figure it out. Only 6.4 because billion,
Billion.
because
To go underground.
Virgin Island got 2 billion. Puerto Rico got 11 billion. We're only asking 6.4. You can underground the whole island, provide batteries, upgrade some systems, even some combustion turbines. So we have a whole list that we've been putting into the FEMA mitigation and a lot of the federal entities. Everyone's been coming in, and believe me, that everyone from the Department of Defense, the Air Force, they've been coming and visiting us. So we've been putting that out there and stuff. So hopefully we get a good package from there and underground systems, not only for water, wastewater. Yeah, we still need the standby generator no matter what, because even underground lines can go down, right? And we want to keep the water flow and wastewater, but all of that is, even this thing is in there. If we get grant for it, then we won't use our CIP line, you know what I mean? But all of this have been submitted, in hopes that, not in hopes, but we're saying, hey, this island subject to threats. Everyone's concerned about us being really resilient and reliable because we're the sole source of energy. So underground systems, not only for water, wastewater, but also for communications and medical facilities and other facilities that are very important, as we can see, as we have seen after Myanmar. So all we need is 6.4, and we won't spend it overnight, probably 10, 15 years, no? But at least approve it. So
It never
that's-
hurts to ask.
Yeah, no, believe me,
no.
we've been asking, and hopefully something happens soon, something happens this year. Get a big chunk, and then we will, prioritize it. But I think it's only fair, and actually it's not only fair, but it's reasonable based on what they're asking of us from the island and the type and what we know, we believe they need in terms of reliable power. And not what they believe, what we believe they need. Because at the end of the day, right, we give them all the power necessary because the one that missile defense to shoot or to fire. So I think I feel what you do fairly confident that we're going to get some balance. But I don't know yet how much. So keep plugging away.
One more thing I wanted to ask, John. Hanwha's made a fairly significant investment in this already, haven't they?
So they've done the grading and all of that stuff. That's all. So we have some very stringent milestones for that, including already placing all the orders for this and that. And so once this is approved, they have to meet those milestones. If anywhere along the milestones we don't see that's going to happen, then we can terminate this one.
And you still are holding the $4 million?
Yes, yes, we still have it.
Any other questions? Pete, go
Just
ahead.
curious, John, this centralized battery that you're talking about, it wouldn't happen to cost $4.6 million, would it?
No, only half a billion.
Huh?
Only half a billion.
$500 million?
Yeah, 4.5.
Yeah, just to reiterate what, on the last meeting regarding Hanwha's performance and, the lack of it, and what Attorney Marecki was talking about in terms of the cost to the ratepayers and to the island exceeding like $40 million in savings that we should have had, right? And so, and it also forced us to spend additional capital on these backup generators to mitigate load shedding, right? So like the additional 40 megawatts, I think we purchased for backup generators, the diesels. Do you recall like how much that cost?
40 megawatts for,
You know how we had the existing 40 megawatts?
okay, that's the one that's coming to you now. And that's the CCU approved the 20 megawatt temporary power.
20 megawatts.
Right, with provisions to allow us to provide them providing us some assistance to repair the 20 megawatts that will be up on the same site, and another resolution which will move 20 megawatts from Chigu down to Tenjo Vista. So that'll be coming before the commission shortly, so that we can add about 54 megawatts of power within the next between May and September.
We had an order before us regarding the backup generators. The temporary power, didn't we?
Yeah, you approve us going out for 40 megawatts, and I mentioned that the budget was around I think about 13 million, and unfortunately prices have gone up, and the most we can get for about 12, I think it ended up about 10 million a year for 2 years. Instead of the 12 or 13, it's about 20 megawatt plus some other scenarios.
So I think what you're doing, John, you're getting 20 megawatts for temporary power, and then you're going to get about 18 megawatts resurrected from some of the existing diesel plants we have and put them back together and put them to use.
That's correct. And then we want to replace 20 more megawatts and put it in Tenjo Vista. Right next to the, so that will be able to serve the South Nebo Station and everything. That's actually, if you may recall, we had the 40 megawatts of machines. Our longer term plan was to relocate some to the south, no? So in case of a storm or anything, you can feed. So, because the quickest way to get about close to 40 megawatts rolling is to use the Jigu diesel site. If we had to do it in, the only other site that we could have done it was Tenjo, based on permitting requirements or things like that, right? But that would take all the way up to September, maybe the end of the year to get done. So that's why we decided to move half of the units, about half, and let Agreco set their 20 megawatts in there. Those units will be stored, we're renting, just rent some property from CLTC right adjacent to Jigo, put the units there. Then try to get the remaining 20 that we're not moving, operating, so we can try and get 40 megawatts from this, no? Over the next few months.
Is this the same units that are supposed to come online by May?
40 megawatt is what I was proposing.
Right.
20 of that will come on the line by May. And then we're working to try and get try to get the 6 to 8 that we have today up to 20 by May.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then the move to Tenzo Vista is going to take about 6 to 9 months to do it. But we have other things in the pipeline. I actually was going to print it out tonight, but so the way looking at it is 20 megawatts temporary power. Try to restore another 14 megawatts from the existing up in Jigo, so that's 34. And then we have Jigo CT. Should be ready to ship maybe by the first week of February. We're working with the Air Force to see about air freighting that in here so that we can get it on the line by the end of February. So there's your 54 megawatts of capacity to be on the line before or by May. And then the next phase, the other phase is because we have to prepare the site and everything at Tenja Vista. That will be the 20. There's a separate resolution that's coming to you. Right? So that will make it 74 megawatts. Plus, we're trying to fix the Tenjo units and other things so that we can get close to about 100 megawatt of capacity by September to November.
Okay. Yeah. Getting back to that development security charge though, and that was one of our concerns, was the 4.6 million that you're holding.
Yes.
Right, so, and I know you put some milestones in place to keep their feet to the fire, per se, in terms of completing this new portion of it. Other than the 4.6 million, is there any other disincentive for them? I mean, because it kind of didn't perform to begin with, right? So I mean, we already can almost have that today. Is there any other additional security that you're putting down besides the milestones
No, just the 4.6 because you could normally say, oh, we lost a lot of money, but we never really got it. What we could only gain was 4.6 because they couldn't do the job. But so here we are now, we're trying to get them at least to move forward on this for, to meet the consent decree, plus save some money, right? Based on the latest thing. But that's all we have.
Right, because I mean, that 4.6 obviously wasn't enough to get them to complete the original contract in 5 years, right? Yeah. So it's almost like
what drove them out of the realm of things, right, was again, the cost of transmission, supply chain issues and all of that. So that was the original reason why they said so. I think that what they noted was the transmission cost, because remember they were going to put in a 150. I think I think they estimated 24 million and it went up past 40 million. So they couldn't do it financially.
Is there any reason why for Amendment 2, why we would have to waive any failures of performance? Why would we have to?
Yeah, we can, if you don't agree with Amendment 2, then we will garner the 4.
Why should we waive that early on, right now?
We will garner the 4.6. That's our alternative right now based on the plan. So that's what we're saying, we're keeping that 4.6 on. And if they don't perform at some time in the near future, then we're back to 4.6. We still don't have a way to get EPA, but I think they're going to go forward with it. They're ready to roll. And again, we're asking for order documents once we approve this.
Doris?
Along that line that Peter's putting on, the procurement appeal from OPA was in December of 2017. Here it is now, 5 years later, and we're still talking about it. Why, I guess, after 2 years negotiating, why didn't you just call it off and start all over and keep the $4.5 million? If I go back to the pig and the poke, who was not interested.
Well,
Because
we could go.
And with all due respect to what Fred said, this is not the same bid. That bid did not ask for batteries and all. We changed this bid entirely.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to Fred, I think we do have a certain amount of due diligence to ensure that the procurement gets proper. Yes, at least to do our own due diligence, but why didn't you just, you've been holding this $4.5 million for 5 years now. Why didn't you just cut your losses and go out and rebid it?
We didn't have any losses, no, except if
negotiating with them.
if we terminate it or whatever, we'll just be in court, no? Because if we have been until the end of the contract, that's when we know they don't meet the deadline. We can extend it and everything, so it's a clear cut. We just keep the money. In the meantime, understanding we had other issues, then we continue to try and work to see whether we can salvage this thing. And again, energy storage battery, and we looked at as somewhat of a change order to the whole thing. That's why we proceed. The price of the energy that they put in, the 6-point and the smart grid did not change. We refused to change that portion of the thing. So the value that we're getting is the battery, the full shifting battery. So that's why we had ended up with 14.3. No? So I'm thinking, we're still getting what we're getting, not 60 megawatts, but we're going to get 40. We're going to comply with US EPA, and we're still going to save money based on this thing, based on what we see today. So we still see it's relevant in the contract from our perspective.
What was the completion date for this, if we proceed with Hanwha?
December 2020. Then, if amended.
The 2025 or 2026?
December 23 was the end due date or the
Oh, the original. Oh, right.
last.
Okay, but this particular contract now
Amended
Will
one.
be December 2025.
December
Maybe plus or
2025.
minus 1 or 2 months, because of we haven't approved it.
So the benefits of this contract at this point in time, where they bring something to the market 2 years earlier than any of the other solar bidders.
That's right.
They're at a lower cost than any of the other solar bidders. In year 25, the 25th year of this contract, they're at a lower cost than all the other bidders in year one, except for one bidder, Mojave. And the biggest thing of all is that battery. We don't have any battery like that in the system right now, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any battery like that in the system anytime soon unless some miracle happens with a federal grant.
What does the battery do for us in 2026? Of course, with the new Kudu coming on the line and we retire, we have to retire Campus 1 and 2. We have to let the temporary power go because we cannot afford both that and equipment. But now it gives you 22 megawatts of capacity, at least for the 4 hours, because at least for the 3 hours in the peak time, right? So that's really like another generator that's coming on the line. What does that do? Although we're going to have some capacity for growth, as much as 60 or so megawatts, right? When Ukudu comes on and we retire Campus 1 and 2, this battery brings it up to 80 or 90. It helps address any load that may be coming in, not only may, but most likely coming in from the DOD. If they themselves have been noting that they may need as much as 100 megawatts, another 60 or so megawatts over the next several years. We're trying to invite in here data centers. No? Data centers now are huge load factors. For what kilowatt that they ask, they run it like 70%, 60 or 70%. All those bring in a lot of money to the base rate, which will hopefully now reduce the base rate component of our bill. They're not going to come in here unless we figure out how to stabilize our energy costs. It cannot go from 14 cents one day to 30 cents in LEAC. But I think 14 cents to 17 or 18, which is what phase 4, in my mind right now, phase 4 and the Ukudu will do, I think that will start to provide an opportunity for them to see us as energy stable. Huh? Because it's not just the cheapest, it's the stability of the cost, right? Because if you put in a data center and the power costs go up and you're substantially energy guzzler, then there goes all your profit margins, right? So that's why, so this does that capacity by shaving the peak in 2026. Huh? Because again, so it has all those added values for us, really. And as much as I didn't particularly care about doing what I brought to before you, I think it's something really that is important that we move forward with.
John, what was the date again? Can you remind me for the consent decree? Or when the reason why you have to
Actually,
have online?
December 2023 is the date.
That you were supposed to have it online?
Yeah.
But have X amount of wattage?
Right. So now, 100 megawatts.
By
So-
2023 was the
Yeah.
consent
So
decree?
so some old man thought he had it all figured out, no? 60 megawatts from KEPCO, 60 megawatts from Hamwa, and 40 megawatts from phase 3 on Navy base that got protested, remember? And we won that protest, and after 2 years, we lost the war. So therefore, we were down, said, oh my gosh, so now we're down to only 60 that's completed, and we've got December 2023 deadline. So we've been letting EPA know that we're trying to get something, and so this is what we're trying to do. If not, then we have to look at other alternatives. But that's what we promised. That's how we came up with the 100 megawatts out of potentially 160. Yeah, 120, yeah, 160.
Is there any provision in the contract that we have to purchase X amount from them?
There's a minimum energy that they provide about guaranteed.
That we guarantee that we're gonna purchase
They
from them?
guarantee.
But do we have to purchase it? Does it guarantee on both sides?
Part of their financing.
Right.
Yeah, and 14.3 though, it's a good price. Because even if you look,
Should they have issues and not be able to deliver, there's a penalty on it. There's also, I noticed that you guys in your milestones, other than the development security, that there was some kind of, other penalties that were
We do have some liquidated
liquidated
damages.
damages for it. Okay, along the
So
way.
the 4.6 million is for if they're not able to meet the performance bond, right? But you can draw down on that with the liquidated damage. So we don't get that 4.6 million unless they're not able to.
But you have it in your hand.
We have it as an LC,
So you can draw
we're
down.
able to draw down on the damages of those two occur.
Right, all the way to the line, okay. I do like the 14, so basically it's 14 cents versus 17 cents, because we are gonna address LEAC pretty soon, so, that's the difference.
Milestone timelines, that's the first two milestones. Contract, 6 months into the contract. The first two milestones, when are they? Like a month into the contract, 6 months into the contract?
Days,
2 months.
is after PUC. They were gonna get their EPC vendor. So basically start up the whole design construct. So once they can get, they're kind of holding off on that at this point until they can make sure they have a contract to award or to work out.
And after the 60 days, when's the following milestone?
They have several milestones. The next one would be working with us to do an updated impact study to see if there's any issues that need to be mitigated. And again, that would be at their own cost.
As far as days?
And then notice to proceed. That would be, that was around March 15th, but we slid a couple of months because we were anticipating an award in November, an approval in November. The next major one would be a notice to proceed for their EPC to start doing the construction work. And they do have, so we do have a listing of milestones as part of their contract. So we have long lead item vendors contracting on or about March 31st, EPC contract signing, notice to proceed in June 24, completion of the system impact study, delivery of modules, PV modules by March 25, equipment for the microgrid ESS by September 25, and then the commercial operation, again, this is assuming a November approval, December 25. So we do have.
So you're committed to void this contract if the milestones aren't reached? The timelines?
So, I'm sorry, can I just, there's a hard deadline, but it would have been December, so probably we put it up to January.
2 months.
And yes, if that deadline is not made, then the contract will be cut off. But within a year.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm curious about EPA's feedback to you. If the consent decree was due since September 2023, so what did EPA say with regard to the shortfall?
So we wrote to the EPA in mid-December, and we haven't heard back. But I think we gave them a lot of detail and explained really well exactly how it happened that we did not meet their deadline for 100 megawatts by December 31st, 2023. So we're pretty hopeful that they will accept our force majeure claims.
So what would be the penalty if they don't agree with your request?
I don't remember the exact amounts, but there is a penalty.
4.6 million?
No.
No, we're going.
There's some penalty. Again, I believe we have I believe we have a good argument for why we're delayed. Most especially when we provide an alternative as we could with power as soon as we can. That's where we're heading, because, I mean, it's no fault of our own that we lost the phase 3. No fault of our own that Hanwha didn't deliver. We had every intention to meet 100 megawatts. No? So we will plead with them. We will go and shake their hands and do what I have to do. But again, I just need to make sure I have something that I try my best to still deliver. No? So that's what when Marianne is saying we're hopeful. I think we're hopeful, yeah, we won't get better. It's not, yeah, certainly, we can provide that number that I looked at it before. 500 the first day and 1,500
After the 31st day.
after the 31st day. But it's more, again, if we don't get rid of the consent decree, we still have it hanging around. No? If we meet Upudu, we complete in September of 2025, and this is done right after that, and we're out of the consent decree. And we're not in any consent decree that's similar to what could happen, like GWA's long-term consent decree issues. No? Not saying anything bad about that. It's just they keep their hands on you. That's the world.
Is it possible for us to waive any failures of performance contingent that there is no penalties for EPA? Yeah, just curious. I mean, because if we're going to get penalized, then they're not. Like, I'm wondering if we don't take out the waiving of any failures, but just will agree to it if we don't get penalized.
But they would pay.
Then they would. The 4.6 is still part of the non-performance. We're getting charged because they didn't perform. Yeah. That's what their security was for. So,
well, of course, it's all speculative because we don't know what US EPA will do, but I think that would be a difficult clause to negotiate.
It's about 510 for the 1 year penalty.
500.
A day?
I'm sorry, 540,000.
540,000
For the first year. But based upon our history with EPA, generally they see things our way for the most part as we're going.
I think so, and we work very hard to,
Yeah.
I mean, we're very transparent and, maybe in this case, Obama, we've been trying to save the project. That's why, knowing that at worst case, we can garner this at December 31st without any arguments or any court filings or whatever. So, same thing with Ukulu. I think we made our best effort. And by the way, that next month, that's the ECA amendment that we're bringing to the CCU and of course to yourselves. And the ECA amendment is looking at moving Ukulu from January 15, 2026 to September 30, 2025. That's about an accelerated program, which has some accelerated costs. The cost is about 4 million to get to September 30 and 1 more million if they get done by September 15, 2025. Now, that may sound like a lot of money, but when you look at that, we're going to save anywhere from 5 to 7 million a month, in fuel costs by then commissioning earlier. So that's 20 million savings, and you're providing them an incentive of 5 million to get it done, because they also experience a lot of costly things. I mean, insurance doesn't get them all the money. Delays cost money, interest costs money, and all of that. So that's kind of, again, just giving you a preview as to what we've been working out to get a September 30 date and stuff. And again, it's going to be a savings to us versus just contractually waiting until January. But that's why I'm saying September 30, 2025 now. So to get this done and the Hanwha done, then we're completely done with the consent decree.
Okay. Anything else? We have a few other big items here yet this evening.
Striking this amendment down on waiving, you're saying that has to be renegotiated, and then it goes back, and I think that both parties have a vested interest to move forward with this. And language saying that, just taking this one out, saying that we're gonna hold on to that. We're not waiving your past performance, your lack of past performance. We're gonna hold that all the way till the end of this contract in September. So, taking it out so in the beginning doesn't sit well with me. Because at the end, if we're the other in 4 years. Isn't that less than $4 million?
$2 million.
Right? So in phase 4, we'll comply with the consent decree at that point.
Yeah, 1.6 in 3 years. 6.4 million in 3 years.
Don't waive this, the failure of performance just yet.
Well, if you do that, it's going to delay the whole project. They'll have to go back, there'll be negotiations, and difficult to say when it would. Then it would have to come back to the commission too for approval, and that's just going to delay things.
And then they won't have if the delay is going to be on the Hanwha side at that point, right? Because they're going to have to say no to this.
Well, but then
But do they want to walk away with 1.6 or just leave language out and work with us? Because they already didn't perform. So what are we saying to them at this point? Like, okay, go ahead, we'll extend it and change all this stuff and then, meet these milestones. And then they don't perform, then we're still back to square one.
but I think GPA is trying to save a deal that needs to be saved in order to comply more with the consent decree and to provide the additional power as soon as possible. So an issue like that will just, I think it would really delay everything and, basically require all of this to be done over in part and come back again before the PUC. It's a tremendous delay. And then it might not work. I mean, I don't know what their negotiating position would be, but I just think if that's done, it's probably make this deal very difficult.
So if they come back again a year from now and just say, hey, we didn't take into consideration these additional costs, we can't do it for this much, and then they decide that they pull out, that 4.6 is still on the table?
Yes.
And we pull it from this point moving forward, if they don't perform, that 4.6 is still there. That's right. Pull from. Okay.
And there seem to be a lot of other protections in terms of the scheduling, the dates on which they have to.
The liquidated damages are just taking from the 4.6 though. It's not additional on top of it. And so it's not like there's an additional disincentive for them.
There could be additional, I suppose. I mean, it's not a cap necessarily, but when there are liquidated damages, yes, it could be drawn down from the line of credit.
Anything else? Anyone prepared to make a motion? Don, do you foresee any deal better than this one before us right now in phase 4 or any other phase in the future? It will be a better situation than what we have before us right now?
No, Mr. Chair, this is what we have before us. It's going to start, it's more real than the others because we haven't even agreed to award the others. And then we have something that we can bring forward to US EPA and we tried our best, and I think it'll give us the leverage, to leverage to alleviate any penalties to them. So,
has this proposed amended deal help dictate some of the terms going forward on phase 4 with the other bidders also to keep them in check?
Yes, we will make sure. And secondly, if any one of them, and I'll say for the record, thinks that they could come back and do this type of stuff, it's not going to happen because this is very specific. We work this out so that we didn't increase any price or whatever, and yet we got some value with the batteries and everything to achieve. Phase 2 was not achieving the shifting of energy. So we made it where this is almost like a phase 4 contract with a change order of batteries. So No, I don't think we'll get a better deal from this. It's obvious already from the numbers that are there. Cost of batteries have not been coming down. Maybe it'll come down some, but as you can see, the margin 14.3 versus 17 cents. That's a lot of money.
And once again, their 25th year in the contract puts them at where all these other bidders are primarily at year one.
Yeah. And part of that is because as you go up in the number, it's still, we only have, they all have a 1% escalator, right? But 14 to 1% and 17 to 1%, then it's a much greater savings, no? As time goes by out, so it's got that value again. No?
I want you to hold their feet to the fire on this one. So reluctantly, I'm going to move to approve GPA docket 2406.
I assure you that I will hold your feet to the fire.
You're going to hold Peter's feet to the fire.
And I will keep you
I want to
abreast.
see 14 cents for like 5 years.
And I will keep you abreast when of what's going on, no? Understanding that you're all concerned about this.
Okay.
But
We'll help you.
Marian is all here and she's going to be watching this. Right, Marian? Like a hope. Yeah.
Oh, let's see if it passes first. Is there a second to Peter's motion?
I'm just going to reiterate what Peter said, with the milestones, hold their feet to the fire. And I know this is going to, you're also saying that this is going to help with EPA's consent decree.
Yes. Yeah.
With that, I'll second this motion.
Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Doris is a no. Rowena, you're an aye. Mike and I. Aye. 5-1, the motion passes. Now you can talk to Han.
Thank you,
Don't forget the word.
listeners, and I will keep you informed, and I understand the difficulty, and we'll make it happen, or get it done. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Finally, we're at GPA docket 2408, a less controversial docket. Petition to approve the levelized energy adjustment clause. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred, make it easy, okay?
I will certainly try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. First of all, before I begin, I would like to point out that our consultant, Mariana's consulting group, Lee Denzel, Cora Montellano are here. Please
Stand up and take a bow.
And they have assisted mightily in my preparing of this report and understanding where we stand. So the initial proposal of GPA was to increase the current LEAC factor of 23.1144 cents per kilowatt hour to 26.4327 per kilowatt hour, essentially a little over a 3-cent increase per kilowatt hour for meters read on or after February 1st. And that was the original proposal. And actually, it turns out that the final factor supported by both GPA and our consultant is a little less than that, closer to 0.261 or 2.62. So it's a little lower, but very, very close. The original proposal would have constituted a 14.36% increase in the LEAC factor and a 10% increase in the total bill, with a monthly increase of $33.18 to the residential customers using an average of 100 kilowatt hours per month. Of course, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities approved that factor and that petition. The main reason cited in the petition was an increase in fuel prices. The current period was approved at $102.51 per barrel for the 7-month period from June 1, 2023 through January 31st of this year. But the projected average price for the period ending July 31, 2024 was expected to be $120.28 a barrel. First of all, the amount of the present GPA under recovery balance necessitates an increase in the LEAC. And this is really the primary justification and the reason that LEAC has to be increased. In the petition, if we go DPA in the resolution before the CCU had indicated that the under recovery as of January 31st, 2024 was supposed to actually not be an under recovery, but an over recovery. The last LEAC case, GPA indicated that there would be a $10,000 over recovery of January, as of January 31, 2024, a few days from now. So the whole idea was the 23-cent LEAC factor, which commenced in June, was supposed to be enough to pay for the fuel and to get rid of the under recovery. I have to say, when I first read that GPA now said there was a 19.5 million under recovery that would be due as of January 31st, I was surprised and likely shocked, because I had remembered that the prior LEAC rate was supposed to completely do away with the under recovery. And so really the question, of course, before PUC is how we went from an over recovery of $10,000 to an under recovery at just a few days away at the end of this month at 33 million. Yeah, it's 33,417,000. That's the end of this month. Very, very surprising. But I believe that in their report, Mariana's consulting group, they've provided a cogent analysis of how that 33 million under recovery has come into effect. And in the MCG report, there are 3 factors cited. First, in the last LEAC proceeding, that was docket 2316, GPA had estimated that as of August 1, 2023, the under recovery balance was 7,750,981. However, the actual under recovery balance as of August 1, 2023 was 19,215,000 rather than the 7.757 million. So the under recovery balance, in fact, was greater by 11,457,000 than GPA had estimated. Secondly, fuel cost was more expensive than GPA had estimated. This resulted from differences in use of different kinds of fuel, the ultra-low sulfur and diesel, that is the quantities of each that were going to be used. And that was indicated by Mariana's consulting group, I believe in its Exhibit 6. So that resulted in an additional fuel cost to GPA of $10 million. And thirdly, estimated sales to GPA customers decreased by over 13.849 million during this current LEAC period, probably as a result of Typhoon Marwar. So sales were down, of course, when there were outages, and that factor results in additional 13.849 million. So that's the predicament. Right now, 33 million. How do you deal with that? there has to be an increase. It's the only way to effectively try to recover that huge amount that is now owed. So I'll talk more about how to recover it and what that will look like, but it seems to me that's the justification. I mean, unless the commission's willing to allow that kind of under recovery, which goes back to the days before when fuel prices were rising and rising, and the commission had to repeatedly raise the LEAC factor. But I think that's the primary justification for an increase. Now, both GPA and MCG, of course, under the standard procedure of the commission, we have a policy that BPA supplies updated fuel figures from Morgan Stanley for 10 days, the 5-day period, 10 days before the commission meeting. So those figures were provided. And actually, the fuel pricing is not that much different. I think it's a little more now, but not too much increase on the actual fuel prices. So both the parties have arrived at a new fuel recovery factor of 0.261995 per kilowatt hour. And the question then becomes, well, how do you recover that? Do you recover it all at once at 100%? Do you recover 75%? Or, as GPA proposes, 50%? So I believe that after having reviewed all the figures and the impacts of the different rates, that I would recommend the PUC adopt a 50% level. If you look at how these different rates would work, so for example, with a, let's say 100% recovery, that would result in an increase in the average residential customer bill to $61.70. That would be a 26.69 increase in LEAC and an 18.77% increase in the total bill, FD increase. Then if you look at the 75% recovery, that would be an additional $46.28 for the average residential customer, which would be a 20% increase in LEAC and a 14.08% increase in the total bill. If you look at the 50% recovery, and the factors, of course, would all be higher at the 75 or 100 level. I think at 75%, it would be over 27 cents. At 100% recovery, it would be, over 29 cents. The 50% recovery, the factor will be 26.1995 cents per kilowatt hour. That results in an increase for the average customer of $30.85 per month, which is a little less than GPA had originally proposed, and a 13.35% increase in LEAC and a 9.39 increase in the total bill. In my mind, it's, I don't know if there's science attached to it, but I think about, you know, the average monthly increases of $46.61. That seems pretty substantial. And since GPA apparently is willing to go along with the 50%, as the commission had previously done, it attempts to gradually reduce the cost to the ratepayers and at least to extend recovery over certain periods of time. I think it's more fair and reasonable for the ratepayers to adopt the 50% recovery level. So that, of course, is the recommendation that I am making to the commission. They're also in the proposed order, there's a couple of more recommendations. And these were recommendations that Mariana's Consulting Group made in its report. And I think they're worthwhile and should be considered and adopted. The first is basically to indicate to GPA, of course, there is Tariff Z, which allows GPA to file for interim relief with the commission when there is either an increase of 2 million in the under recovery or even a decrease. So that was not done here. I mean, essentially we had a prediction of 33 million more under recovery. And at some point GPA could have come in and requested an earlier modification of the LEAC. I don't feel that this is something the commission should mandate, because when to file for rates or even under Tariff Z, that's a decision up to GPA. But the commission should certainly instruct that this is something that GPA really needs to consider when we find ourselves in this kind of situation of a huge increase in the under recovery. So that's the first recommendation. It would basically state in the order that GPA would at least consider such a filing in circumstances such as those in this case. It could be other situations, typhoon, generation, equipment failure, etc. But it's a recommendation to GPA that this seriously be considered when the PUC and the ratepayers find themselves in the situation that we face now. Another recommendation is that GPA file updates with the PUC on actual costs to date versus the cost estimates in the petition. So a lot of times in the petition, many of the months are not yet final, the actuals are not yet determined, but it makes sense for GPA, of course, to be continually looking at this, and also perhaps to file updated actual cost figures during the LEAC period with the PUC. So those are the two recommendations that were adopted from the MCG report. And with that, I conclude.
Thank you, Fred. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Fred. Yes, this is a very difficult scenario that's been with us for, 1 to 3 years now, of course, with COVID and all this. But the main reason that we need a rate increase is to make sure that we have enough money to buy the tankers and fuel, especially when they start going. So we did advance as much as 47 million one time, but of course, I could see accounting and everybody was struggling, collecting, not worrying. So really, that's not the level that we feel comfortable, at least to achieve, recovering of the funding is kind of a secondary right now. It's really making sure that we're able to buy our fuel and keep the fuel cost as low as possible to the customer. No? So that's why we propose 50%, which now again, like Fred had mentioned, after Marwar, all things change, and here we are, where we would have been, 97,000, I believe, or here 33 million. No? So I do want to note that there is some light at the end of the tunnel here, and that we will recover the cost. And when is that light begin? September 30, 2025, right? That's when Ukudu gets on the line. I just ran the numbers right now. If get approval to 26 cents, right? Kudu will start generating itself 1.2 billion kilowatt hours per year. That's a difference of 12 cents per kilowatt hour. That's $144 million of less fuel costs. That's $12 million a month. Remember I talked about the acceleration cost? I was very conservative. Based on this, $12 million a month to every month that we can get that unit on the line earlier. So therefore, I guess, we can recover all of it, but really, we have a twofold mission right now, is to try and keep it as low as possible to the customer and buy our fuel. So what was recommended of the 26 cents, I think will do that for us. No? Not 29 cents that will give us, again, try to cover back to zero. If we continue this trend towards September of 2025, then the recovery will automatically come with again a blessings and a pleasant scenario for our ratepayers. So that's where try to recover it all overnight. Really, I think we could wait before some of the CIP programs so that we can get to where Ukudu is, and then we can make that recovery and the balance of it goes right back, and then we're back to the normal scenario of LIAC. But that's why we asked for a 50% recovery, and hopefully that over the next 6 months that become better. And so that's where I was just trying to figure out, we could say never ending, no, but no, this is a case that it will end. The plan is 80% completed. Contractually, we're working to get it done by September 30. So if we can keep moving forward, keep paying our bills with oil, we're okay on the O&M side, then we'll get to there. So that's my thoughts, Mr. Chair, but we do need to, right now, at 30 some, when we got to 47, I'm saying accounting and controller and everybody were trying to get whatever money so that we can prepare to buy the fuel. So we get down around 18 or 20, I think it's survivable for us, even if oil prices start going up again. So that's why I think I agree with the recommendation to the 26 cents.
Thank you, John. Mr. Kim, I think we've been through this a couple times in the past, and when we've gotten under-recovered to a large level, we've just had to come in and update us monthly. So why don't we do that over the course of the next year here, at least, to make sure we don't get too deep into the hole again. Okay. Any comments?
Just from the report, it almost gives the impression that there was some kind of oversight where the last time we were looking at LEAC, we thought that we were going to go down to zero. We were all thinking finally we've gotten through all of this. And then I was kind of shocked when I saw the 33 million also. But the more I read this, I think maybe you're in a position where you didn't predict the typhoon, right? So the typhoon comes, now you're trying to restore the island. And maybe, the question is why wasn't there some kind of interim request? Was it because, you don't want to come in and ask to raise power rates when there's no power and when everybody is load shedding, right?
Our priority, yes, you're correct. Our priority is restoring power, and yes, higher cost because we're running the edible combustion turbine, right? Versus thing, no choice, we have to provide power. And add insult to injury, but again, we're still below. I didn't see John pulling his hair yet, no? So that's why, and again, 33 minutes, we've been there. 47, it was really tough. So we said we'll just wait until the January finally. And in fact, in November, we already set 50%. Just so happened we were hoping the prices were starting to go down, but if you look at our latest again, starting to go up. But it's kind of like, again, like this. So if it stays this way, I think it'd be good for all of us. But again, that's kind of where we're coming from is that we maintain where we're able to purchase the fuel. When the power plant comes on the line, it's really a very simple recovery process for that. That would help everyone at that point. But yeah, Typhoon Mower did impact us.
Ordinarily, if it weren't for that, in a situation where you just miscalculated and you didn't estimate accurately, and then you found yourself in a position where you're under recovering, you would have come in.
Yes.
It would have been an interim request with, the circumstances and what you're going through and trying to recover probably had been going. So that's the point.
Yes, I agree. It was nowhere in my mind about raising the, as long as we were still buying fuel. And of course, we were buying less fuel, right? Because less production with time, so that kind of helped us through a little bit.
Just to add on what Mike was talking about, just real quick, because I know it's the same thing, you probably have to answer it. So in May, we were at $7 million, right? So whether this was, as a commission, we're making decisions based on the numbers that you're giving us, and we're trusting those numbers, right? So first, the question is how did this happen? And two, what are we doing to prevent it from happening again? Because it's such a big difference, right? Even if it was in May, $11 million in 3 months, I'm not sure, I've never really seen that in 12 years. There's such a big gap in estimations. So was it an accounting error of some sort? Because this was like pre-typhoon anyways. And then the other 13 million from lack of sales was just, well, we weren't really burning fuel either. So because we didn't have any power, right? So how did it happen, and what are you doing to prevent it from happening again, so that the numbers you give to the commission are more accurate?
Yes. The estimation we do is based on 5 days of Morgan Stanley future pricing. Back when we did filing in April, we were asking for about 24.8 cents. When it came to me in May, a PUC usually requires us to update the five-day projection. When we did that time in May, the fuel was very low. So that updated information came out to be 23.1. However, as soon as PUC ordered that, made that fuel adjustment, the fuel started going up and creeping. As soon as at the peak was during the time of war with Israel, I guess Palestine. So that during that time, the peak did go up. Now in later part in November, December, it's been going down. So when we did the filing in November, we asked for 26.4, as Fred mentioned. And before 10 days before the meeting, PUC usually asks for another update based on Morgan Stanley 5-day average. So that 5-day average is what the future pricings are. So we update those. With that, at 50%, it came out to be 26.1. The problem is that Morgan Stanley is just an average for 5 days. So 5 days in January might be different. 5 days in December will be different. For us, when we buy fuel from Hyundai or Mobile, it's usually 5 days before the docking and 5 days after, so we get 10-day average. So that's how we do it, but for us, it's not what we're projecting, it's what we're based it on the 5-day Morgan Stanley. The only thing we actually project is we do computation is consumptions and sales, and that's where we put the input. Even Mariana's, we go back and forth, we change variables, but that's the impact. The significant impact is usually the fuel price. In a peak, it could be like $130 spots. It could be $89. Previously was $60. Last week was $100. Right now it's $103. So if you ask me, should I, rather than using Morgan Stanley, should I use my consultant numbers? We could do that. Or we could just do weighted average. So there's some mechanism we've been dealing with our consultants, but for now, this is the method we've been using for the past, since I've been in GPA's 8 years, and Cora's probably been there longer, so she knows familiar with the model because it's the model we have been using. When market is stable, it's very predictable. When the market is very unstable, we have to come in every month or every other month. The other thing that very unpredictable was the war in Ukraine. That no one could predict it, so that's skyrocketed fuel prices to like $180 per barrel from $100 or $80. And at the same time, because of the war, they call it the crack spread. So the price of petrol you buy from WTI or Brent versus what diesel was, there was a big, almost $60 spread during the refining costs, or there's not much supply. Because during that time, what happened was there was a ban on Russia natural gas, so everybody in Europe had to convert to diesel. So there was no supply in the U.S. and there was no supply in Europe, so the price has gone up. There's still issues with, there's still war in the Middle East, there's still terrorist activities in Yemen, so we really don't know what's gonna happen in the future. Will the price go down? Maybe. Can the price go up? Maybe. The thing is, even like last November, December, most consultants were like in January, the higher probability of going up. But later part of December, like, oh man, it's gonna go down. But this week, price went up. So, and we just had a discussion last week. Oh yeah, it looks like a downward trend. Come this way, like, oh man, it's going up. So it's hard.
The difference is really just strictly in the fuel prices, which is like,
Yes.
it's not in any kind of accounting or estimation issue.
No, it's the fuel prices plus the higher consumption of fuel during the period, because remember we had issues with Cavers, number one.
Right.
And number two. He didn't really almost run, it was up and down from from the storm to August, September, October. Cavers number two has been running now since the end of November, so it's been pretty stable, at least that's why I'm knocking on wood. But again, so what did we have to run for that? Did it do CT1, CT2, and then it's 9. They're 9 kilowatt hours per gallon. Cavers is 13 kilowatt hours, so higher consumption because of the issues we've had. So the combination of all of this.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Both Johns.
Go ahead, George.
When is your next purchase of fuel? How often do you buy?
We have multiple fuels. Well, we buy one from Hyundai, which is the ultra low sulfur diesel. That comes in almost every 40 to 45 days. So the next purchase will be, we just ordered it. It should be coming in the first week of February, and that's close to $29-30 million. We got the first 5 days, waiting for the next 5 days.
And when do you have to pay it? When is the price set?
The price is set on the day of loading, so we get the average of 5 days before loading and 5 days after. So it becomes an average. We pay an average of 10 days. But we do have smaller, smaller plants, Ditto 1 and 2, Gigo cities. Those are coming on a daily basis, and it's whatever the price is at that time.
I'm just hoping that now, as only the 18 million is through by July, right?
August.
I have a question. The recommendations, Fred, from our consultant, is the update, have the actual cost per month, correct? Yeah, that they come before us with another LEAD filing. Is that, did I understand?
Are you
that
speaking of the recommendation?
Right, from MSC.
Yes, it's just during the LEAC period that GPA, when it can, update estimated costs to actual costs, so we have a better idea of what's actually happening.
And that would prevent any type of discrepancy with the under recovery.
Hopefully.
It'll be tighter.
It would help.
Yeah. That's giving GPA the information needed or data needed should they need to come before the PUC within that period, within the LEAC period. So we are favored on that part. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Mike?
I've moved to approve the increase 8.261 along with the recommendations of the consultant as proposed in the proposed order.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody's an aye? Unanimous. Thank you, GPA. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you.
And John, hold Hanwha accountable. Hold Hanwha accountable.
Next. Next is GWA, docket 2403, petition for approval of the issuance of GWA water and wastewater system revenue refunding bonds and associated documents. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Joe Fett, I believe this is yours.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse on this one as GWA is a client of our law firm.
Thank you, Mr. Pangilinan. Mr. Pangilinan is recused from this docket. Go ahead, Joe Fett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the commission may be aware, this particular docket concerns GWA's request to the PUC to issue water and wastewater system revenue refunding bonds. And as the commission may recall, the original bond issuance was back in 2005. And since that time, GWA has issued a number of subsequent revenue as well as refunding bonds. For example, GWA issued bonds in 2010, in 2013. In 2014, it issued bonds to refund the 2005 and 2010 bonds. Then it issued bonds in 2016. And in 2017, it issued bonds to redeem or retire a portion of the 2013 bonds. And on in 2020, GWA issued bonds to redeem or retire a portion of the outstanding 2013 bonds. And so in this petition, GWA requests approval to issue one or more additional series of bonds in a principal amount sufficient enough to provide funds to redeem or retire a portion of the 2013, Series 2014A, Series 2016, Series 2017, and Series 2020B bonds. GWA, as can be gleaned in its petition, believes that allowing it to issue these revenue refunding bonds would provide it with potentially millions of dollars in debt service savings that can then be used to enhance GWA's planning for future capital financing needs under what it believes to be favorable market conditions. And so with that PUC approval, GWA would then have the flexibility to enter the financial markets for this refunding and achieve a targeted debt service savings well above the statutory 2% net present value savings as required under Guam law. And specifically, it's my understanding that GWA seeks to refund its 2013 and 2014 A bonds to just a straight refunding, but with respect to its Series 2016, 2017, and 2020 B bonds, it intends to issue tender offers on those bonds. And Mr. Chairman, GWA's request is supported by the CCU through GWA Resolution number 49, fiscal year 2023, which essentially authorizes the issuance of the subject refunding. The CCU further approved the form of the preliminary official statement, as well as all of the corresponding draft documents that GWA provided to the CCU for its review related to the bond issuance as well as the bond purchase. The CCU in that resolution authorized GWA to engage and participate in activities related to the sales and marketing, execution and delivery of related documents, for instance, closing documents, notices, consents, and agreements, as well as activities that are that would be related to any invitation to tender those bonds that I just mentioned earlier. And for this refunding, we of course analyzed the strictures under Public Law 32-069, which is quoted fully in the report, and that permits GWA to issue and sell revenue bonds under certain conditions, specifically and most significantly where the bonds have a final maturity not later than the final maturity of the prior bonds, and that the present value of debt service on these refinancing bonds are at least 2% less than the present value of the debt service on the bonds that are being refinanced. And so based on the documents that GWA provided to me, which includes documents prepared by GWA's underwriter, RBC, they intend to refund about $74.2 million of its Series 2013 and Series 2014A bonds, which as of January 12th, RBC indicates that such refunding should result in a debt service savings of about $6 million. Specifically, they've indicated, and I believe that the documents from RBC should be attached to the ALG report, Mr. Chairman. RBC believes that the refunding should result in a net present value savings of about $5.4 million, with an average annual cash flow savings of about $506,000 a year. GWA has indicated that the cost of issuance would be about $2 million, and that was in response to an RFI issued to GWA, wherein GWA's legal counsel had indicated what they predict the cost of this particular issuance would be. And now with respect to GWA's intent to issue tender offers on its Series 2016, 2017, and 2020B bonds, and this might be a little new for the commission as I don't believe that we've ever analyzed tender offers with respect to bond refunding. So GWA spent some time to present that particular component to me last week with their underwriter to review like what that tender offer process would look like and what the estimations would be. And so with respect to these tender offers on those bonds, GWA would essentially invite its bondholders to relinquish or tender their bonds for new bonds. And in these conversations with RBC, it was indicated that they expect between a 20 to 40% response to the proposed tender offering, which would yield between about $10 million to $20 million in debt savings, or about $6 million to $12 million in net present value savings. And so specifically, and I believe it's indicated in the attachments as well, Mr. Chairman, the presentation provided by RBC, that if GWA receives a response of 20% across the tender bonds, this could result in a net present value savings of about $6.1 million, or an average annual cash flow savings of about $500,000 per year. RBC also provided information should GWA receive a 40% response on that tender, which RBC has indicated would obviously be on a higher end of that predicted response rate. A 40% response could result in a net present value savings of $12.3 million, or an average annual cash flow savings of $1 million per year. And as indicated by the documents prepared by RBC, the difference in the net present value savings would be about 11.2% of the refunded par. So again, it would be above the statutory 2% as required under Guam law. And GWA has indicated again that this type of package would be about 1.5% cost to issue. And also GWA has indicated that with respect to this type of tender, there is an agent fee of about $19,000, and it's a fee to sort of have the agent engage in this tender process, which is a process that involves notice, invitations, and then final closeout, like 10-day period, to see what kind of responses GWA receives from the tender offering. In addition, Mr. Chairman, this particular refunding request is also supported by the Guam Economic Development Authority, and I believe just last week they issued a resolution number 24-002, again authorizing GWA to redeem or retire a portion of its prior bonds, plus any related costs of issuance for such redemption or retirement. GIDA also authorized GWA again to issue a principal amount of bonds with maturity dates and interest rates not exceeding any limitation, of course, established by the Guam legislature, interest payments and terms of redemption that they believe GWA believes is reasonable under these circumstances. And GIDA also authorized and directed GWA to do all things such as executing and delivering instruments to consummate the sale of these refunding bonds, to include activities, of course, associated as well with the invitation to tender any of the prior bonds that we were just discussed earlier. So based on the estimates provided by GWA as prepared by RBC, The refunding of the Series 2013 and 2014 A bonds would result in a 7.2% present value savings, which is greater than the required minimum statutory 2% debt service savings that is required under Guam law. And with respect to the tender offer, based on, again, the estimates provided by GWA as prepared by the underwriter RBC, the tender offer at a 20% response rate, which the RBC underwriter indicates is kind of on the low end of a response rate for this type of tender offer, would result in a 11.2% present net value savings, which is again greater than the statutory 2% as required under Guam law. And so, Mr. Chairman, based on this record, I found that the refund was allowable based on the following: that GWA appears to have complied with the existing statutory requirements and regulations that permit it to issue these types of refunding bonds. That with respect to the statutory 2% present value requirement, RBC's documents estimate that the present value savings for the refunding are at, for the refunding specifically for the 2013 and 2014 A bonds is at, would be at 7.2%. And again, with respect to any of the tender offers on the Series 2016, 2017, and 2020B bonds, they've estimated those savings to be at 11.2%. And further, all of the necessary regulatory approvals that the PUC requires prior to these types of reviews have been provided to the PUC, and of course they include the CCU resolution as well as the GITA resolutions. And so I'm satisfied that, at least with respect to the regulatory requirements, those have been satisfied. And so based on this record, Mr. Chairman, I've recommended that the PUC allow GWA to issue these refunding bonds based on the parameters that they presented to us and that we've discussed. GWA is also, as is in the normal course of these types of requests, provided us with proposed orders, which I presume are prepared by bond counsel, which the PC is familiar with. So it includes an order approving the issuance of the refunding bonds, as well as a long-term debt order, which includes, again, the authority to authorizing the issuance of these refunding bonds, as well as approval of the supplemental indentures that were presented to the CCU and to the PC that authorize this type of refunding, as well as authorizing whatever documents that are required for the bond purchase, for instance, the bond purchase agreement, and any of the other disclosures and notices that are required for this type of sale and issuance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe Fett. GWA?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the documents that we've provided indicate that we meet the minimum thresholds. The refunding, just on its own, the straight refunding is worth going after to achieve debt service savings and reduce our operating expenses. The tender offer, if it works out, will add to that, to the savings. And we have the flexibility during the tender period. If it doesn't look as attractive as we would like it to be, we can walk away without any obligation. But we still would like the flexibility to pursue it because there is a significant potential for additional savings. And so we're seeking the board's, the commission's approval for us to move forward with this refunding opportunity.
Thanks, Miguel. Any questions from the commission? Doris, go ahead.
When we did the refunding back in 2017, we had a loss of $12 million. That refund, the loss, How was that $30 million loss funding offset? How can you say we have savings? This 30 million dollars loss from just the two fundings alone.
So my understanding, and forgive me if I don't get all the terminology correct because I'm just an engineer and not an accountant, but my understanding is that the paper losses, the losses that you're referring to from our audit, and the notes that accompany the audit indicate that the loss is a result of a reconciliation between what is required to put into an escrow account to refund the par amounts for the bonds that are being refunded and the carrying value of the refunded bonds on the books. It does not, that accounting adjustment in order to reconcile those two amounts does not result in an actual loss. It's booked as one simply to reconcile those two things. And in the case, for example, of the 2020B bonds, it was a taxable advance refunding. And so the escrow account was opened in 2020, but the refunding of the refunded bonds did not occur until 2023, the call date. So it was an advance refunding. So included was the refunding amount, which is the par value of the bonds, plus the interest that would have been paid anyway on those amounts, and that gets put into the escrow account. So the difference between the escrow account amount and the amount of the carried value on the books shows that difference. In order to reconcile it, when the defeasance occurs and it gets canceled, it's a wash. There's still that amount that's shown that needs to be reconciled on the books, and that is the difference in the quote-unquote paper loss. But if you add up the actual amounts for debt service that would have been paid had you not refunded versus the amounts that you paid with the refunding, there was an economic gain, and that is also included in the notes on the audit. So I think it shows it as a loss, as an accounting treatment only, but the actual result financially for GWA and the ratepayers was a multi-million-dollar savings. So that is my understanding of how it occurs.
You're not I'm an accountant, and I lost. Because I don't know how you can say a $30 million just it's a loss. I never heard of a paper loss. On the bank's history, but in Joseph's report, it says that we're going to achieve about $500,000 in debt service reduction. So how did that come about? How did you calculate that?
If you take a look at the documents that were in the provided to the ALJ, there is on page 1 of the presentation. This document, page 1. No, that's the piece of it.
The document in the handout is not they have divided in response to the ALJ RFI in the original package.
Right, so the savings is simply the difference between the debt service of the old bond and the debt service of the new bond. And the 516 average annual cash flow savings is what is estimated to be saved on an annual basis.
But what interest rate are you assuming that the debt service will occur at in order for that to happen, right? Because the interest rate you're talking about now is not exactly good.
Right, so the all-in interest rate is 3.389, which is on,
What is the interest rates on the bonds we want to refund right now are approximately how much?
the interest rate on the
The bonds that you're planning to refund.
the coupon rate is about 5%. The coupon rate is about 5%. I think
So in order to
bonds that are
do this-
5.25. There are some bonds that have a 5.25.
So what's the, how much are you looking to refund in total?
For the 2013 and the 2014A, we're looking to refund about $74 million.
And what is the average rate on those?
So the average coupon rate was 5. Most of them were 5%. There were a couple at 5.25.
And to achieve the savings that you're projecting, what would be the average rate?
The all-in interest rate is 3.389%. Market conditions at January 11th, I think.
Yes, January 11th.
Right, so, one of the things that we're doing is we're monitoring the market on a regular basis. I think when we started this process for this particular refinancing, we started it back in the last quarter of fiscal year 22. 23. And, we started talking to our underwriters, bond counsel, we spoke to the rating agencies. And then you might be aware there was a war in Israel. They fired the Speaker of Congress, and the market just didn't make sense for us to go forward at that point. So we paused. So now interest rates are looking better, and we would continue to monitor the market, and if it doesn't make sense to go out, then we wouldn't. So at this point, we're projecting that we would realize savings of $6.2 million on the 2013 and 2014 A's. If you take a look at the presentation that we gave you, we tried to do sensitivity analysis, so the rates moved up by 25 basis points, we would still recognize present value saving of 6.1. If it moved 50 basis points, we'd still be recognizing a present value savings of 4.9. And so, again, we would continue to monitor the market, and if it didn't make sense, we would pause.
Market conditions are much more favorable than they were about a few weeks after we started this process. So we've paused, the market has come back, the conditions are favorable based on the analysis that was done using January 11th data. It hasn't moved that much since then. We might not be at the 7.2, we might be slightly below it just with the current shifts, but the sensitivity analysis shows we haven't moved 25 basis points. But even if we did, it would still make sense for us to do, and there would still be appreciable savings that if we're acting fiscally responsibly, we should be going after.
Going back to the paper losses, again, they're not insignificant, $30 million in that total paper loss. It's going to affect somehow, does it affect your debt service coverage?
So the handout that I gave you has some information related to the 2020 refinancing. The last page is the note from the audit that talks about the $22 million defeasance loss. So what happens when we refund the bonds is a portion of the proceeds, a large portion of the proceeds are put in escrow to eventually pay off the bonds that are being refunded. So in the escrow, we need to put enough money to pay the principal when the bonds are callable, plus any interest during that period. For these particular, for the 2020 Bs, we completed the transaction in 2020, but we didn't actually pay off the bonds until 2023. So we had to have.
Why?
There was right, because the bonds were not callable until 2023.
Because the interest rates at the time you and so if you can lock it in and you do that deal and you set that money in escrow, then you reduce the amount because you're eliminating the interest rate risk between 2020 and 2023 when they're favorable. Sorry, Tom.
So the amounts that go into escrow include amounts that
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I can just document, was a clear gap before you pay. The refunding is at a lower rate, but the bonds you're refunding are at a higher rate. And you're still subject to paying that higher rate. Are you still subject to paying that higher rate for the next 3 years?
We are subject to paying interest on the bonds for the 3-year period.
At the higher rate.
At the rate, that's the fund rate of the bond, yes, right? So that's.
So there was no savings.
No, that's not true. Because.
Well, if the bonds are not callable for 3 years, and you funded at X. Okay, yes, because,
The rates that we're paying on the refunding bonds are low.
yes.
So there is a savings in the debt service and that's what happened.
But you still incurred, because of that refund, you still incurred a loss. So how can you say it's a paper loss?
So again, the proceeds to pay off the principal and the interest for the 3-year period were put into escrow. The escrow is held by the trustee. It's taken off our balance sheet. Those monies don't hit our balance sheet. So the bonds to be refunded that were callable in 2023, those were also taken off our balance sheet. So the cost of the carrying value, any accrued interest on that particular bond, there was a discount. That's on the sheet here. So the difference between the amount in the escrow and the amount to take off the liability, that difference, the 22.3 million, is considered the defeasance loss, which is the paper loss. The true savings was 13.5 million, which was the difference between what we would have paid on the 2013 bond debt service versus what we are paying on the 2020B debt service. And that the economic gain, which is the present value, was at 11.9 million. I will also say that if you go through the Guam audit and look at almost every single refinancing, each of them, almost all of them show a loss, but they also all show savings because we're required to, by law, at least have a 2% saving.
So, Tolling, so that, because Ernst & Young in their 2022 audit, they characterize it as an accounting loss. And so that's your explanation of why they have indicated that this is an accounting loss, yet it is a 13.5 economic gain for GWA?
.5 in savings and 11.9 in net present value.
Thank you. I hope the faces I'm looking at are a little more favourable than the faces I usually look at. Just to pick up this issue on the difference between the accounting and the cash part of this, which I perceive is the nub of the discussion tonight. If you think of it as refinancing your mortgage, in the case of GWA, the whole matter got kind of magnified because there was a long gap between the advance refunding, which was unusual. We did have a situation similarly for the limited obligation bonds, but the gap wasn't so big, so the loss on refunding wasn't so big either. This happens to be large because of the time that's taken between the closing and the actual cash transfer. But if you think of refunding a mortgage, when you take out a mortgage, you're paying the closing fees, points, and all sorts of costs go into that mortgage. When you decide to refinance it, those costs are lost. But you decide to refinance it because your future cash flows are more favorable because your interest rate is lower. So you take that loss. You don't, because you don't do your own financials like you do a commercial enterprise, but you're effectively writing off that loss and suffering that loss on the refinancing. So in this case, it just happens to be bigger numbers, but as Tarling says, every time we go through this process, unless you issue your bonds at a discount, which we haven't done, you would end up with a loss on refunding. And I just want to add, it doesn't affect the difference in the net present value, because that would only come from cash flows.
Makes sense to you, Lars?
It's getting clearer.
Okay.
Still a little bit, yes.
I'm going to defer to you because I have zero accounting.
His account is better.
I know,
I understand the word you said.
The mortgage was, example was clear. So at the end of the day, there is a net savings for GWA. And there are, I think we did put some measures in place to make sure that before you execute any kind of refi or bond sale, there has to be a certain percentage of savings. And I think by law, that's not 2%, right? You guys are saying you're coming 7.2, worst case scenario, 50 basis points is about 4.9% in savings, correct? I'm all for savings, so I'll end it there. If there's no other further discussion on it.
Maybe what I would like to do, if you wouldn't mind, if, because I don't want to hold up this process, my mind is still not quite clear. But I could sit down with you folks to walk me through this, so I can get clearer understanding.
And we could, if we do it in the morning, we could ask the, no, but just in the morning, we can ask our stateside underwriters to help you, walk you through it.
Yeah, well, I think before we do that, I would rather have us walk through this.
And with that, I'd like to move to approve GWA docket 2403 to save the ratepayers some money.
Rowena seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you very much,
everybody.
Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne and Mr. Carlson, for showing up this evening.
Yeah.
Got to enjoy,
Lester.
got to enjoy the show.
Say Lester was just smiling the whole time.
Yeah, I know. Oh, thank you so much.
Hotel Administrator.
Thank you, GWA.
We're still, there's still, they're doing another reading, but.
Yeah. Yeah. That one, yeah. Oh, maybe that one I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Roll my travel regulations back, just so I'll return it.
Okay, now on to administrative matters. Next item is PUC travel rules and regulations review. This came up in